92% of our students are students of color. 78% of our teachers are not of color. I mean, that's like...
regardless, it's a crazy dynamic.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it affects the education when majority of people in power over students are white, but the students are minorities, because when these people in power, they're kind of using their own experiences to affect the students, not realizing that these students have different lives than they had or that they have.
Like all my teachers are white.
So when we're thinking about why American teachers are so white, so when we look at a period like Brown versus Board of Education, when people were advocating to integrate schools, we weren't necessarily advocating to integrate our cultural knowledge. So what ended up happening in Brown versus Board of Education, we're looking at having black students essentially giving them the rights to white schools, which didn't mean that we were hiring black teachers to work in white schools. It didn't mean that we were incorporating what was viewed to be acceptable and supportive curriculum for African American students into white schools. We were just busing them or providing them access to white schools. So what ended up happening is like black teachers lost their jobs a lot of the times. They weren't given those positions. They were still white teachers were seen as the most fit.
As of the 2011 and 2012 school year, 82% of the teachers were white nationwide, whereas 51% of the students were white nationwide.
And historically, as we've given more and more people of color access to this white school system, we haven't made space for teachers of color to teach in it either.
Everybody has their own life outside of that classroom where they go through their own trials and tribulations, so it's only right to really understand and like make your classroom a safe space, understanding the language you use around your students, because there are a lot of transgender, transsexual, LGBTQ plus community around, different ethnicities, races. I'm not saying to really be cautious too much, but make sure you're not being rude or ignorant, which is a problem with a lot of white teachers.
For me, it's just a matter of understanding and being able to like respond to my problems. Because, for example, I had I had an immigration meeting, so I had to miss a class. And I went to said teacher, and when I told her what I had, she said, "What, are you gonna get deported?" And I was like, I had a split second to decide whether I was gonna be cordial and laugh and ha 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 and then just get my grade, or if I was gonna go off on her. And it's just it's little things like that where they don't understand what I'm going through, and they don't understand why school sometimes is just not top priority. Because I'm trying to just stay in this country, first of all. Like, is that not important enough? And I know that everyone's learning, but at the same time, try and learn about me, you know?
For me, I'm recognizing that, you know, teachers are in a difficult position, yes. However, I also recognize that being racially equitable in your classrooms is free. You do not need to spend money to be just and respectful of our students. And while teachers have a lack of resources in their profession, these students have a lack of resources in their lives.
Sometimes it can be uncomfortable going to school, or you don't even want to go to school because you're not being heard.
Teachers as well, you know, they don't understand that when they come to school. Like, what you teach my son is what's going to carry him for the rest of his life, you know, so you're going to be a major part of his life.
An advice I'd have for teachers is basically get to know your students, because when you just think of your student as a group of one type of person, you're never going to really understand where they're coming from. It's not wrong to go look for help. It's actually a better thing, because those classrooms, those students need you to really enlighten them. And if you're not enlightened yourself, you can't really do much for them either.
So, outright, not to be disrespectful, but like when a white teacher is teaching a course that's about the oppression and hurt that people of color go through, I cannot take them seriously, honestly, because they don't fully have the experience, they don't have the knowledge to be able to respond. And when you're going through some emotional shit with what you just read, it's really hard to have this like white person patting you on the back. It's okay, I understand, when they don't fully understand, and they won't ever understand. And that's okay, but they have to understand that they won't understand. And you have to be willing to take that from me, because I feel like with a lot of the teachers, they're not ready to learn from their students, because they're like, oh, I'm up here and you're down there, and just stay there for now, but I'll help you get up here.
I think if you have a teacher of color, especially teaching ethnic studies courses or like culturally rich classes, then I guarantee that you'll have more student engagement, because not only can you relate to the course subject, but you can also relate to the teacher that's teaching it. Yeah, I just think people of color needs to be more represented, like everywhere.
Not to say that I can't relate to someone that is white and that I can't learn something from them, but for someone that has been in my position in life and knows kind of the struggles and the adversities of where I come from, especially being from, you know, low-income housing and kind of like poor neighborhoods in Providence, Rhode Island specifically, you know, I'm more likely to listen to the person that is successful and made it out of these situations versus the person that is coming from the outside in and is telling me how to be successful. If you can't relate to someone, then you can't learn from them.
You know, being a teacher of color doesn't necessarily mean that you're connecting with kids, and not being a teacher of color does not mean that you're not connecting with our kids. I mean, you know, there's some woke white folks out there, and that's great. But what we need to do is make sure that, you know, we prioritize this as a city and as a district, so that you know, people understand that, you know, your job is not simply to come in and, you know, be, you know, the, you know, content knowledge expert and just disseminate that, kids absorb it, and they go about their business. You know, our job as educators throughout goes much deeper than that.
And what's really important is that, you know, that child, or, you know, that youth feels like they have, you know, mentors to go to, feel like they have people to talk to.
How do we build these really deep and transformative relationships with kids so that we can inspire them to dream even higher?
Seeing people of color in positions of power really helps empower students as well.
Because a lot of times we ask kids to envision themselves as something that they've never seen, and that's difficult.
Well, I know growing up and like realizing that, it's like I'm not represented in any of the jobs that like are normal. Like, you know, everyone as a kid, they're like, oh, I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be a doctor or a teacher. And growing up and not seeing any black lawyers or any black teachers or, you know, black doctors, it's just like, oh, that's not something I can do. I can't be a doctor or a lawyer. So I know personally that like that made me like I basically chose what I wanted to do in life based on that, basically. So I was like, I can't be a doctor or a lawyer, so I want to be an artist. And like that was how I expressed myself. But ultimately, I thought it was the only thing that I could do, like, because I know of black artists and poets and things. And so I felt like I could do that because people before me have done it. When you see white people on TV, there's just so much more like personalities, I guess, that they can take on. Like if you see a white person, they can be a mentally insane person, they can be a doctor, they could be someone who is a single parent. Like there's just so many more options as to what white people can be.
But there are a number of lawyers, doctors, professionals, you know, leaders in our community, and we need our kids to be exposed to them so that they can say, ah, yeah, he's a professional, went to college, comes from my neighborhood, looks like me. You know, his message resonates with me. I want to be like that person.
Working at PSU, I'm a young person, but a lot of the places I have to go or a lot of the things that I have to do, I meet a lot of like older people. And in most scenarios, and a lot of like, I go to trainings and I go out of state for conferences, and that's not typically something that an 18-year-old does. So a lot of the people I meet are old white people, and I think it's cool though that for them to see like a young queer black woman like doing what you're doing, and I'm like, I'm just as cool as you, like I'm younger than you and I'm in the same bracket. And yeah, I just think it's really important to like show these people I'm just like I could do it too.